Okay, so peace be upon you in the name of God the merciful, the compassionate. Oh, if I'm going to read this, I'm going to have to take my glasses off, so now I can't see your reactions. That might be better, actually. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me and for showing up here today, all of you. It was quite a shock to get invited to England. I really had very little idea that, that anybody knew me here, and probably many of you don't know me. So I thought this. First talk would be sort of an introductory talk where I explain why I'm here, how I got here, so to speak, and then we'll just have some question and answers. Many of the issues that I'm going to raise today during this talk, I'll talk more about in the coming days. So this is sort of like a, sending off. So is that all right? So I begin this talk by talking about how it is I became a Muslim. And then, if time permits, then I'll talk about the difficulties encountered after becoming a Muslim, especially with regard to fitting into the Muslim culture in America. So how did I become a Muslim? I remember when, I did become a Muslim. I often would go to websites or read pamphlets put out by Muslims, and they would claim that I converted from Christianity to Islam, and I did not convert from Christianity to Islam. I converted from atheism to Islam. I did not believe in God. So I used to leave the door of my office at the University of San Francisco unlocked because I knew I would eventually lose my keys. So I left it unlocked so I could get in and out of there without having to keep going down to the main office and asking them to make a new key so students would leave books in there, assignments, things like that. So one day, I walk down to my office, I walk into my office, the door of course is open. I go in there, and I see a green text sitting on the middle of my desk. And I assumed a student left a book there, and I walk over to it, I look at it, and on the cover of it, it says, the Holy Quran. An English interpretation. And I look at it and I thought, who left that there? Immediately I knew. Who must have left that there? Must. It had been my family, my adopted Muslim family. And then I thought, what are they trying to say by this? I thought they said they didn't want to talk about religion anymore. Now they're leaving a copy of the Quran on my desk. Are they trying to convert me? I mean, God, they're not even religious people, my tabars and discos. Maybe they're saying, if I don't become a Muslim, our friendship can't continue. All these, I'm a very sort of skeptical person, pessimistic. I always assume the worst to begin with. But then as I thought about it more, I realized this was like a peace offering. I could see in their faces they were embarrassed when they said, they indicated they didn't want to talk about religion anymore. I thought this was a way of sort of smoothing things out. Jeff, we don't want to talk about it, but if you really are interested in our religion, here's a copy of the Quran. It's our scripture. I knew it was their scripture anyway from other conversations, so I took it as a peace offering, and I didn't even bring the subject up again. I put it on my shelf, actually. I put it on my coffee table in my apartment in Diamond Heights in San Francisco. I left it there, and then a couple of weeks passed, and when I was a grad student at Purdue University, I shipped all my books by the cheapest method possible to my office in San Francisco, and none of them had arrived yet. See, the only books I had with me were the ones I brought in the U-Haul in the moving van from from Indiana, that I drove out to California with, and there was only like 20. So in no time at all, I had run out of things to read. So I had nothing to read this night. I looked at the magazines. I had already read them twice. I turned on the TV, it was Johnny Carson. So boring, I turned it off. So do you know who Johnny Carson is? No. All right. So now I'm sitting in my U apartment and nothing to read. And I'm looking around, and I look over, and there on my table, side table, is an English interpretation of the Holy Quran. So I pick it up and think, why not? I'll read a few pages, I'll get bored, I'll put it down, maybe, luckily, hopefully it'll bore me to the extent that I'll go to sleep. No, seriously, I wasn't expecting much, although, some scriptures I had read were very beautiful, had beautiful stories. So I thought, maybe the stories, the myths, etc. will be interesting. So I pick it up, want to get through this part, next 10 minutes, I pick it up. I am boring you, am I not? It's like when I teach mathematics, I'm really into it, and then I look at my students and I'm getting all excited, and I turn to my class and They're all looking at me like, can we leave now? I pick it up and I look at the first surah. I turn the first surah, and I'm just reading it out of academic curiosity. And in the name, it's obviously a hymn of praise to me. It's like a psalm. For those of you who know the Bible, at least, it starts that. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, all praise be to God, ruler of all worlds, master king, or master of the day of judgment, actually the day of requital, the day of recompense, the day when counts are settled, to alone. And then it goes on from there, and I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, oh, a hymn of praise, a song, and I get to the end of it, and then as I get to the end of it, I realize, oh, the last few lines slipped into, made the subtle transition into a prayer for guidance. Show us a straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not those who have gone astray, or upon whom is violence or wrath. And I thought, what a clever author. You know, he tricked me into making a prayer for guidance, a supplication for guidance. Clever man. So I assumed, of course I assumed, the Quran had a human author. So I turned to the next surah. And it begins, Alif Lam Mim, Arabic letters, then that is the book we, and no doubt is the guidance for those who are on their toes, who are vigilant. So I read it, and I look at it and say, so are you talking to me? Are you saying that this prayer for guidance that I just inadvertently made, you're now saying that this is the guidance that I was seeking? And I looked at the opening line again, and it says, that is the book. And I thought the author has a very interesting style. See, from this point in the Quran, the beginning of the second surah, from here on out, the perspective is God addressing the reader. God speaking to the reader. I always thought, you know, scripture should be like the ones I was exposed to, stories, ancient history story, a biography of a prophet or something. This is direct God talking to reader, addressing the reader. I thought, now this, the author of this book definitely was original. He actually wrote a revelation from God to humanity, which is what you would think a revelation would be. But not only that, he has a very engaging style. He gets you to ask questions, and then gives answers, and then creates more questions. Somehow this Quran, he wrote in a style that gets you into a dialogue with the scripture, like that just brief dialogue I just mentioned. I'd have that experience repeatedly as I read through the Quran, this dialogue. I'd find myself drawn in, I'd ask a question, few lines later, sometimes a couple passages later, maybe I would see an answer, and then I would create another question, and then I was involved in this veritable dialogue with the scripture. So, okay, I have to stop in 4 minutes and give the taper a break. So I keep on reading the Quran. I think I'm impressed by the author's original and ingenious style. And then the next several verses, the next several passages, summarize the Quran's major themes. Talks about who could be guided by the scripture, who can't, sort of the prerequisites for getting guided. I thought that's very clever. Sort of the same way we write math texts. And then I come, of course, to the famous allegory, what you would expect after you get through an introduction. The Quran's going to talk about Homo sapiens, human beings, and their origin and what their life is all about, and the famous allegory of the first man and first woman. So that begins in the 30th verse of the second surah. Should I stop here? Okay, we just have to give them 1 minute to switch. So I come to the 30th verse of the Quran now. Up till now, I am impressed with the author's style. But I'm only 36 verses into the Quran. I'm not so impressed, and I'm captivated by the scripture. But I come to the 30th verse, and it begins, behold, your Lord said to the angels. Behold, your Lord said to the angels. So we're about to hear a heavenly announcement, a heavenly election, a great moment. So this great election, behold, your Lord said to the angels, I'm going to put a viceroy of mine on earth, a viceroy, an emissary, a representative of mine. This is a noble election. God is about to create man and assign him a noble role. I immediately said to myself, no, he obviously got the story all wrong. Man is not put on earth to fill some noble role. He's put on earth as a punishment, because that's in my religious tradition. The one on my birth, the one I abandon, and I'm not putting it down, but that's the way the story is told. And I felt the author got confused when he was, repeating the story. I mean, this was my perspective. Behold, your Lord said to the angels, I am about to put a viceroy of mine on earth. And then the angels said, And the angel said, will you put therein one who will spread corruption and shed much blood, while we, the angels, celebrate your praises and glorify your holy name? And I read that and I just stared at it. I was captivated. I was angry. I could feel the heat rising inside me. Because look what it says. Will you put therein one? God says, I'm going to assign thee, humans, this noble role. And then God and then the angels say, are you going to create this being who spreads corruption and sheds much blood, this most criminal, violent, destructive creature, and put him on earth in this role? When you could create us, as they plainly say, well, we celebrate your praises and glorify you. How could you create this and assign him that role when we are clearly more deserving and more appropriate? Are you following me? And that was my question. That was my life. That was my childhood. All of it just encapsulated in those 15 words. And I was shocked. I thought the author is committing theological suicide. You don't ask the most poignant question in the history of man's theological reflections. A question for which there is no rational answer. Answer in the beginning of the story of the first man and woman at least. Wait to the end of the scripture. But don't put it from the start. I had to find out how he answered the question. As disturbing as I thought the question was, how it brought back all my childhood, I had to find out. And so I was hooked. I wanted to see how the author answered that question. So I began reading through the Quran. And I immediately got some hints, but it didn't fill in the picture. So I kept reading and reading and reading. And to tell you the truth, and this is what I'm going to talk about tomorrow at lecture for the youth, or the people who consider themselves youth, by the time I had finished the Quran, all the arguments I had against the existence of God, all the premises I had built against his existence, one by one I saw them falling apart. So by the time I finished the Quran, I had no more argument against the existence of God, but not having an argument against God is not the same as having a reason to believe in it. Once my daughter Jam asked me, Daddy, I understood, could go and walk after walk after walk, and we discussed these things. I understood how you found in the Quran answers to all your objections to the existence of God, but what made you believe in God? She's a very bright girl, because she understood not having an argument against is not the same as having a reason to believe. And I told her, honey, it's hard for me to explain, but as I was reading, as best as I understand it, as I was reading through the Quran, and one by one, the sort of fortress of the wall I had built between myself and the belief in the existence of God, as that wall began to crumble, one by one, piece by piece. As those arguments faded away, I began to have slight doubts about my atheism. And the more I began to doubt my atheism, the more the power of the Quran began to affect me. And the Quran is written in a very interesting style. In the beginning, it's quite technical, goes into a lot of specifics, laws and rules and regulations. By the middle, it takes you into stories, beautiful stories, powerful allegories. Towards the end, the emotions of the Quran picks up, and it reaches a crescendo and brings it all to this beautiful, powerful bursts of spirituality and eschatology, and it all comes together, brilliant, pounding images. And by the time I was getting towards the end of the Quran and my atheism began to fade away, I began having these powerful spiritual moments when I felt I was in the presence of this tremendous divine embrace. I remember reading the surah. When I got to the end of that surah, I cried like a baby for 20 minutes. I didn't even believe in God. And it brought me to tears. And, I would try to deny these experiences. As I was having them, I would try to step on them. They just kept coming, and it was whittling away at my atheism. So by the time I was finished with the Quran, I had severe doubts about the non-existence of God. So I didn't know what to do. So I figured I have 4 more minutes. So I was in. Now you're okay, because they changed. Oh, yeah, you changed it. Sorry. Weeks were passing now, and I just wanted this experience that I had of reading the Quran to go away. I couldn't sleep. Sometimes when I would walk to work, I would think about it. When I was sitting at work, it would keep coming back to me. The questions that raised, the issues, the power it had over me. I was an atheist. I shouldn't be having these experiences. I needed to talk to somebody, and I couldn't talk to the family that had adopted me, because they it's clear they didn't have much knowledge of religion. So I thought I would go, I heard there was a mosque on campus, and I thought I would go there, and a Jewish student, female Jewish student, good friend of mine, pointed out to me. We were walking by the church one day, St. Ignatius Church, this big, beautiful, spiraling church. And we were walking by the rear of it, and she pointed to the basement and said, "You see that basement door down there? Down that stairway?" I looked down, long stairway, down to the basement beneath the church. She said, "That's where the Muslim students pray." She said, "I heard they have carcasses down there, you know, dead bodies." So I said, "But this was long before," but now I remembered her saying that, and I thought I would go to the place where the Muslim students pray. And asked him the questions. I wasn't going to become a Muslim, and that's out the question, but I thought maybe they could help say something that I could form my own kind of personal religion or something like that, or, you know, a personal philosophy that could soothe me and get this out of my system. So in any case, so I walk over to the church one morning. Now, I told myself I was going to go Sunday. I told myself I was going to go the next day, but I had already done now it was Wednesday, and I thought I would try one more time to get up the courage to go. So I stood out in front of Harry Science Center, and you walk across the parking lot, and there's the church, Harry Science Center, where I have my office. And I'm looking, and I'm staring at the mosque, and it was a day like today in Manchester. It was kind of cloudy, but the sun was starting to break through, so I finally said, "Jeff, come on, just do it." So I marched over, and I get with my head down, and I come to the stairway ways down into the church, to the basement. And I started to get nervous, sick to my stomach. No, wait a minute, I'm not going to. No, let me just go check to make sure that's the place where the Muslims really pray. I don't want to be. So I look around the church, looking for any other more likely entrance. Because it's really a humbling entrance. I mean, it's in a dark basement. It's the stairway is dark. It's the mold on the side of the wall. Couldn't be that. So I went around looking for other entrances to the mosque. There's nothing. So I went inside the church. I thought I'd go inside there and ask somebody might know. So I went inside the church, and the only person there was a janitor. And I went up to him and said, and I looked really nervous, "Could you tell me where the mosque is?" And he looked at me like he was going to hit me with the broom. And he's looked at me like, "Are you nuts? I didn't even think he knew there was a mosque there." I quickly just walked out of the church, stood in now the sun was breaking, felt such a relief to be outside. Then I thought, I'll just go try that. Stairway down beneath the church in the basement, underground. So I went, walked over, stood there looking at it. I stood there for about 5 seconds, and then finally I said, "Okay, let's go." So I start walking down the stairs. Every foot closer, every step closer, the more weak my knees got. I walked 7 miles a day back in those days. I actually used to run 10K to 10 miles a day. I had very strong legs. They were shaken by. The time I got to the doorway, I reached out to grab the door. My hand was shaking. I turned around. I was in a panic. I turned around. I rushed to the top of the stairs, stood there, and I thought to myself, "Jeff, are you an idiot? You go in and out of doors every day at this university. Get a grip at most. There's nobody there, or the students down there walk down the stairs. I turn around, head back down the stairs, same experience. My knees are getting weaker, try to reach the door. My hand's sweating now, it's shaking. My head's, I couldn't do it. I turn around again, I walk quickly back upstairs, catch my breath, take some deep breaths. Then finally, I said to myself, I'll never get down those stairs. So I looked up to the heavens. I don't know why we human beings do this, but we often do this in this sort of situation. I looked up to the heavens, and it was majestic and beautiful. The clouds were dissipating. The sunlight was starting to shine through them. I looked up to the heavens, and it made something I hadn't made in many years, a voluntary prayer. And I said, "Oh God, if you are really there, because I was quite sure, give me the strength to go down those stairs and go inside that door." And then I stood waiting. I was waiting for a sign. I would have settled for anything, bolt of lightning, a bird lay on my shoulders, an earthquake. San Francisco, we have earthquakes all the time, I would have taken it. I'm waiting for some sort of sign. What an idiot I am. But it's true. I was waiting for a sign. No sign. I turned around, walked down the stairs, put my hand on the door, pushed it open. And there were two students inside, and they looked at me and they said, Ken, don't forget, subscribe my YouTube channel. Thank you.